All right. So I've seen lots of stuff out there about how horrible and dangerous and scary cannabis is. Um, Laura Ingram came out and was talking about how 42% of all fatal accidents, we're finding, very high levels, finding levels of cannabis higher than the state legal limits for cannabis. So obviously, cannabis is causing all these car wrecks. All right, let's walk through that for just a second. First of all, the metabolites of cannabis, the things that you're testing for, uh, stay in your system for days, sometimes weeks. So if you have a gummy the night before and then you're in a car wreck the next day because some idiot is playing on a cell phone and not paying attention and hits you and causes a car wreck that kills somebody, and they test that person, they're like, oh, this person still has cannabis in their system. It was obviously the cannabis, not the person jacking around their cell phone. Because I'm going to tell you, and this is maybe I'm biased, maybe I'm wrong. You guys tell me what you think. I think most car wrecks are caused by people jacking around on their cell phones now. I don't think it's from other stuff. I think it's mostly cell phone stuff. But here's the problem: if someone gets killed in a car wreck, who maybe was jacking around on their cell phone, maybe they caused the car wreck, but they had a gummy the night before, they're still going to test positive for cannabis. Now, here's the thing: the statement of above what the state is legally allows. A lot of people think of it like it's like alcohol. Well, alcohol, you can have 2 drinks and still drive and you're legally okay. That's not how it is with cannabis. Most states have a zero tolerance policy. So if you took a gummy 5 days ago, but there's still just a littlest, tiniest bit in there, they're going to tell you that you're over the legal limit. So it's not that people are smoking weed and then going and driving and causing 42% of all traffic accidents that cause fatalities. It's not what's going on. What they also didn't study was how many of those people were also drinking alcohol. How many of those people were also on Xanax or also on any prescription medication that would also impair functional use. All right. So what they're doing is they're trying to demonize cannabis. Now, Dave Asprey posted a deal about how, lots of heart attacks in young people are being traced back to cannabis. People have been teenagers have been smoking weed for a long time. And there's not really anything in cannabis that would precipitate cardiovascular events. However, a lot of young people just got a COVID vaccine. And we know for a fact that COVID vaccines radically increase myocarditis and heart attacks and strokes. So it seems to me that maybe the medical community is trying to pawn off a lot of the damage they intentionally caused with the COVID vaccine that created the heart attack issues on cannabis. Because again, cannabis is a big threat to both alcohol and pharmaceuticals. I did my TED talk on replacing opioids with cannabis. Cannabis can replace opioids 64% of the time. So 64% of the time, we could have a safer alternative to opioids that doesn't cause the addiction and the death and all those sort of things. But we don't because, pharma needs to make their money and the FDA needs their kickbacks. So that's really what's going on there. Cannabis at low doses is great for anxiety. So, now we have an actual functional use for anxiety besides the drugs that don't really work that well. There's a whole lot of things that cannabis would really be beneficial for that would radically reduce, income for pharma. Now, here's the other thing. If you guys have been tracking this, a lot of young people have started deciding that they don't want to drink alcohol anymore. The amount of alcohol sales in 20 to 30-year-olds, and actually 15 to 30-year-olds, but we're only counting the 21-year-olds, is radically reduced because people are opting to do something besides consume alcohol. I gave up alcohol and all I do is use cannabis now, which is, again, why in Texas, the alcohol community gave Dan Patrick gigantic amounts of money so that he would stand up and try to make, hemp and stuff like that illegal. Well, that's what we're getting at. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to decrease the amount of cannabis use, reestablish and increase the sale of alcohol because these politicians are getting funded by alcohol groups and by pharmaceutical groups. And that's really where this is. So, you've got to make the argument, all these people are like, oh, cannabis is so terrible. It's so terrible. It's going to destroy everybody. You have to make the argument that alcohol is safer, significantly safer than cannabis, because we've all agreed, the society has agreed that, and politicians have agreed that alcohol is fine to sell as long as you're 21. So there you go. Well, and let's walk through that for just a second. There just is no official research, just what you've personally seen and talked about with your friends. And Bring this up and talk about this with your friends and kind of get a poll and figure out for yourself where things lie. And you can blame it directly on this. Be like, I was watching this guy's podcast this morning, and so I had these questions. All right, how many people that you've heard of or known about have gotten drunk and gotten into a fight? Okay. How many people do you know who smoked weed and then the weed precipitated them to then get in a fight? How many people are angry potheads? How many people are angry drunks? So, how many people have smoked too much weed and then just sat down and not done anything, which would mean they're not getting in a car and driving, versus how many people have drank too much and then decided they had all the confidence in the world and they're going to go drive all over the place. It happens a lot. I know that I've made that decision, that by the way, wrong decision, multiple times when I was younger. So, I think at the end of the day, we need to start kind of really looking at this stuff and being like, all right, hold on now. I know the government does nothing but lie to me. So the government's now coming out and saying that cannabis is causing heart attacks, which it has never done before. But we've just been all forced to take this COVID vaccine that does cause heart attacks. And we're trying really hard not to tell everybody how unbelievably damaging and deadly the COVID vaccine was. So we have to blame it on something else. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's not. But take that question to advisement. And then maybe they're trying to twist and manipulate statistics so that cannabis looks a lot worse so they can maintain their governments and their control over it. Plus, you also have to understand a lot of money is spent on this war against drugs. So all the people who are, making political decisions about where this money goes, all the people who are, actively, enforcing it, all the people who are running little programs against it and all these things, all of these things are against it, not because it's bad. They're against it because if cannabis is proved to be not that bad, all of these things go away. All this money, all this power go away. So you also have to understand the system is set up to maintain itself. And so if things change, wow, all of a sudden what ends up happening is that all these institutions with all this money and all this power and all these things, they also start to dissipate. So this is a much, much, much bigger argument than just what's going on with just the cannabis. When I did my TED Talk on it, I had to research the hell out of it. And it is very, very safe. One of the other big things, and this is a little neuro for you, maybe this is more than you want to know, cannabis won't kill you like alcohol will. If you drink enough alcohol, there are receptors in the pons, which is in your brainstem, that regulate you breathing. And so what ends up happening, just like opioids, if you consume too much alcohol, you literally shut off the thing in your brain that tells you to breathe. So you just stop breathing and die. So that's why a lot of people, when they get drunk and they pass out, they die. However, there are no receptors in the pons for cannabis, which is why you can't smoke yourself to death, but you can drink yourself to death. So let's factor that in when we're trying to say that cannabis isn't safe enough for people to use or to be legal. And then on that last piece, I'd also like to ask again, who owns my body? Who owns your body? Does the government own your body, or do you own your body? Because if you own your body, you get to make this decision for yourself. If the government owns your body, the government gets to make this decision. The same exact decision with ivermectin. When they decided that ivermectin was too dangerous for you to have during COVID, because really they wanted you to die of COVID so they could get their COVID vaccine pushed forward. But still, at the same time, why do we let people dictate what we get to put in our bodies if we own our bodies? This is a question I think we really need to start asking the government. Hey, government, who owns my body? Do you own it or do I own it? Because if I own it, I get to make the decisions about what goes in it. If you own it, you get to make those decisions. I would really like us to finally ask that question, because I would like the government to tell us who the government thinks owns our bodies. This is supposed to be a free country. However, there's a whole lot of rules and laws about the things we're allowed to put in our bodies and we're not allowed to put in our bodies. So, and this goes through testosterone, this goes through ivermectin, this goes through diflucan, this goes through a lot of different medications that are prescription only and held back on the shelf that away from us that we should have access to on a daily basis. So little things on this one. So when you see these things about how, new research study proves that cannabis is the worst thing in the world, probably a lie. I'm just saying. So take a look at it, read it. If you guys have any of these other things, you're wondering what it means or what it says from a medical standpoint, from a physiological standpoint, send it to me and I'll take a look at it and we'll go back over this. But, like I said, there's a giant push to keep cannabis illegal. And think about that. Who's trying to keep it illegal? Now, remember, the guys who are selling medicinal cannabis and that, they get the license to sell cannabis, they also don't want it legalized because they have a monopoly. only they can sell it. Only they can profit off of it. When you allow other people to have access to it, the market opens up and prices start to fall. The best example of this from a medical standpoint is Ozempic. So Ozempic is actually semaglutide. Semaglutide's been around for a long time. You can get semaglutide for $200 to $300 a month. However, when they said, oh no, now it's prescription, it went to $1,300 a month because there's no more market. There's no more, there's no more way for the body for the marketplace to dictate price. Now, since it was handed a monopoly, the pharmaceutical companies get to radically increase the price. So that's the other side of this. So make sure that you start to understand all the aspects of things. The government is never, ever, ever going to do something because it's worried about your health or your safety. It's always going to do things because it's worried about its profits and its power. Keep that in mind. All right, you guys have a fantastic day. You guys have any questions, hit us up, questions@chalmerswellness.com, or drop in the comments. I'd love to see what you guys think about this one online, because this is a thing we should all really start talking about, specifically the who owns my body comment. Talk to you guys later. Have a good day.